This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not provide professional, legal, medical, financial, or other advice. Opinions from hosts or guests are their own, and not endorsements. Listeners should seek qualified professionals for personal decisions, and we disclaim liability for any actions taken based on this content.
We're going to be discussing about the time travel paradox. So today we have with us Daivik. Daivik, give us a brief intro about yourself.
I'm finally a university student studying actuarial studies and finance. Also a big photography fan, just getting my way into a bit of classical music with learning tabla. That about sums me up.
All right, and then moving on, Skanda, a few words about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Skanda, and I am currently working at Cochlear. I've done a master's in research, and I'm a learner and teacher of Carnatic music as well as the ancient language of Sanskrit. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
All right, thank you for that. Hi everybody, my name's Ved. A few things about me. I'm currently doing a dual master's degree at Macquarie University with intelligence as my main first element and cybersecurity analysis as my second element. A few things about me. I also work as an academic at the University of Wollongong. Skanda is going to be driving today's talk on time travel or time dilation. So take it away, Skanda.
Okay, well, the basic premise of they call it the temporal paradox, is that it's essentially the idea is that if you could go back in time and kill your grandfather, the grandfather paradox, basically, you would basically seize if you kill your grandfather, your father's not born, and therefore you wouldn't be born. So you wouldn't actually technically be able to go back in time. So that's the causal loop that it sort of, how does it affect, how do the laws of physics, how would they work in the case of that happening, if that were to happen? So that's what I was thinking today. What are your thoughts, guys?
That's a very interesting, I think, topic to discuss to start off this podcast. I think there's many elements to consider here. One is the impact if such a thing would happen. If, let's say, you go back in time and kill your grandfather, father, great-grandfather, what happens to the time system? And the second concept is whether that's even plausible to do in the first place. So when we look into this, the latter part of this, whether the plausibility of such a scenario, I think there's a very good question to ask is what is time, or what defines time? Like, is time really a real thing in the same way that we say that money doesn't exist? It's an artificial concept made by humans. In the same way, is time even a real concept? How do we know that it's really there, or whether it's just something we've used or made up for our convenience?
Yeah, I would say this is a really interesting concept because, again, like if we come to the time loop saying that, you cease to exist in this case where your grandfather doesn't exist, then how will you jump back to the future? And then by saying Back to the Future, we can literally talk about Back to the Future because they depicted this in Back to the Future, where I think correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but they go back in time and then they sort of play with time and then come forward into the future, find out the after effects of it. So this is actually really interesting. And if we take physics into account, let's explore the self-consistency principle, saying that, if anything is like self-consistent events can occur in like closed timeline curves, preventing like paradoxes or like in this case killing your grandfather, but it always fails due to like quantum effects or physical barriers. So to be honest, we can use computers to do like many simulations and whatnot, but like ultimately, unless we're in like that specific scenario, we wouldn't have any clue of what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought as well. I mean, it need not be killing your grandfather. It could be anything as small as you being present in the past. It could be affecting so many different factors at that moment, which could set the future so much apart from what it is now or would be in the future. So
Are you
it's
referencing the butterfly effect from Ray Bradbury's story?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention is coming back to your point, Daivik. Time is, again, I mean, it's constructed differently based on what sort of philosophies you look at. If you look at the Christian theologians, they looked at a more linear approach to time, which we sort of prescribe to, most people prescribe to nowadays.
Mhm.
I personally, according to the Sanatani tradition, we believe in a cyclical system of time based on the yugas.
Mhm.
And they're starting to, physicists especially, are starting to explore if that's a viable theory for how time would exist within the physical barriers of, well, laws of physics, basically. So yeah,
Right.
it is interesting. Unfortunately, I mean, this is something that requires a lot of research. People spend hours and hours and maybe entire
Years even.
decades of their lives on stuff like this. So yeah.
Like my question here would be coming back to your concept that time is shown as a cyclical concept in Sanatana Dharma. What does that imply? Does that mean that time will eventually repeat itself? Like 50 million years down the line, we will be having the same conversation in this new life or this new cycle that would have started in the exact same point in time of that cycle? Or do you refer to that the cycle will complete itself and as a result it will start a a whole new story or a whole new world or a whole new cycle and no repetition necessarily?
Well, that's definitely possible, but the point of a whole new world is not to prevent the repetition. So even our modern historians, from, like, let's say World War I or World War II, they often use the claim that history repeats itself.
Yeah.
So whether that be in a metaphorical sense or an actual sense, we know that, again, it actually brings me back to one of the quotes I sort of grew up with, and I really, it really sort of empowers me throughout life, which is like, strong people create weak times. Weak times create weak people. Weak people create. Oh, sorry, what did I say?
No, you messed it up. Other way.
Yes,
So strong people create weak
strong
times.
People create
Weak
good
times create
times.
strong people.
Yeah, that's the one. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people.
Yeah, that's the one.
So, I mean, that's a very simplistic structure from what we look at, but that sort of explains to me how the yuga systems work as well in Sanatana. I think in terms of cyclical nature, it's more based on, so something good happens and then something sort of bad or something destructive happens to end that period of time, which brings life to a new sort of timeline or a new
beginning.
New beginning.
Right.
Okay.
That's
So it's
reset button.
Yeah, pretty much it's a natural reset button. It's not like it's being tampered with per se, or not that we know of.
Right.
But it's like humans themselves create and then destroy themselves, and then bring sort of
Okay. Like my perspective, and again, this is just an opinion, and I really want to kind of get this opinion changed based on what your perspectives are, is that time, I perceive myself seeing time as a very linear thing, because in the same way as I view money when it comes to economics and Arthashastra, it's a man-made concept. The world still functions as it is. It's something that we've made out of convenience. And that's what I still see with time. We have kind of taken a fundamental law of nature and molded it into something that's convenient for us. Essentially, what time is: day, year. It's movement of the earth, rotation on itself and around the sun, right? If we like fundamentally bring it down. So in order for us to be going back in time, either we're literally getting the movement of
The Earth
back
backwards.
in, that whole, and it's not just, we're not simply just moving the Earth.
Ourselves.
We're not just, it's not the Earth that's actually going back in time. It's the whole universe fundamentally, right? Because that there's an impact on the
Each
universe.
different star is a different position. Each planet.
Exactly. Right. So there's that whole impact. So it's not as simple as the Earth just went back in time with the Earth, but it's the whole universe is going back in time. Is that even something like plausible? Because is a time just a dimension where you can jump from one to another? Because if that was really the case, there would have been some kind of discovery or some kind of breakaway into it. And I personally don't see a concept of how that works. Like the Marvel universe has shown that theory of like the multiverse, where each action has like 50 different options available, and that fragments into different timelines and different universes. And sure, you can say that there's an argument where 50 different universes exist every millisecond because you could be doing something different, right? And that would just go in like an infinite level of how many possible universes there could be, with each action compounding millions of possibilities, right? But thinking about the concept of like what certain philosophies in Sanatana Dharma talk about with karma, like even Gita says karma, which empowers the individual and not the destiny. So it doesn't make enslaved to the destiny. It empowers them against the destiny. So
it's always been very
that you have the right to change the future. And so it's not your destiny that's going to say this is going to happen, but it's you who's going to dictate what's going to happen. That can somewhat be based on your past actions, past karma, but it still was or is in your hands at some extent. So if holding that into account, I don't see how the concept of, going back makes sense.
That's interesting because, like, sorry, I might be wrong here, but I think Indian spirituality or Indian Indic knowledge systems or like Indic religions mention karma as being like this really they mention karma, which is really central to the faith system. And on top of that, things like then Atman come into play, where it's like you as the material body, but your material body is just for you here on earth, but your Atman moves around into like the different realms, if you get what I'm saying, the different lokas, yes. So that's kind of interesting, but like if we are to go back, are we going back in terms of lokas, or are we going back in terms of our previous Atman?
Can you really go back in time with lokas? Because lokas exist simultaneously, don't they?
Yes, but lokas could possibly just be memories of those experiences. So if we look at I mean, there have been so many memoirs of like yogis that have talked in their biographies, autobiographies about they've been able to
transcend,
articulate. Yeah, they've been able to articulate their past lives.
Right.
And how would they do that? How would they be able to do that? I mean, assuming that those previous lives were in different lokas per se. We don't know where they lived those past experiences.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they were able to time travel. To be able to have memory of what's happened is not the same as time traveling or going back to alter something. Like, again, this is a very stretch when considering this, but it's like how they say I forgot the species here, but there's many species actually of birds that are born in a different location, but then they migrate to some other grounds, which is across the planet, and their parents essentially die off at birth. So they're born, they grow up on the isle, and then they know the migration pattern just naturally to the other corner of the earth. They don't need to be told. They have no way of knowing where to go. And there's still being research done into how it's possible that they know. But that if that's possible, and again, it's like I'm not even like linking this It doesn't directly correlate whatsoever, but essentially there may be a form of connecting to your previous memories, but you're not necessarily altering anything in the past by connecting to those memories.
All right. I mean, that's an interesting thought, but I would like to bring a story from the Bhagavad Purana, King Kakudmi's tale.
Yeah.
If you recall that, so that's a very interesting tale about time dilation itself as well. So just for our listeners who aren't aware of the story goes like King Kakudmi is a groom. He sought a groom for his daughter Revati, but he found no one suitable on earth, so he traveled to Brahmaloka, and then he went to Brahmaloka, and then Brahma was listening to Gandharvas, and then when he came back onto earth, he found that everything was like his entire kingdom was gone. So that's just a little story about, and then that's the whole time dilation story, which is interesting. So again,
I move differently in different lokas.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So then let's say like in this case, let's say like not even killing your grandfather, but like in this paradoxical case, let's say like for example,
Did he technically time travel by doing
yes.
so?
Yeah.
Right.
So let's say for example,
Very
like
interesting.
I go back in time, like there's just one bad decision I made, for example.
Yeah.
Like say for example, like knock on wood, like for example, like I get caught speeding.
Right.
But let's say like let's say that's never gonna
Or
happen.
you
Like,
get into a crash.
That's more likely.
for example's sake, let's just say I got caught speeding. So if I go back in time at that time, is it still the same? Like, you guys get what I'm trying to say here, but
Right.
I'm just struggling to find words today for some reason.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think there's one aspect to consider here. What is the definition of loka? That's something we haven't discussed. And just going back a bit, when you were talking about like the Atman and the concept of the Atman, right? If we were to time travel back, how is it possible that the same Atman is present in one world or one universe at the same time? That can't be possible because each Atman is technically unique.
That's true.
Can't be duplicated. So that kind of breaks that fundamental concept because the Atman can't be harmed in any way. It just moves from one body to another. So it breaks the concept that the Atman can be there twice in different bodies in one world or one time period.
Well, how would sorry
yeah, of course, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like this is pretty much at the heart of how avatars work as well, wouldn't it be?
Yes.
Sorry, what work?
Avatars.
Like avatars.
Yeah.
Like the 10 Mahatmas
Or
of
like
Vishnu.
how do But see, with the avatars, my perception was when the avatars take place, it's not necessary. Let's say just to make it simpler to kind of visualize, there's a god in the sky. Okay, let's say when he takes avatar, he descends onto the realm of earth. Does that necessarily mean that he's no longer up in the sky? What it feels more like to me is a bigger portion of the Paramatma, a large quantity or a large portion of his Atma come down or consolidates into a human form or any other form, sorry, not human form, but any other form. And that's an avatar. That doesn't necessarily mean that he no longer exists up in the sky or pervades everywhere else in the world. And that doesn't stop him from taking another one simultaneously.
This is interesting.
He would still need to be ever present, omnipresent, right? Regardless of whether he's playing a role as a human on Earth.
So I think we have to make the distinction here between Paramatma and Jivatma for those that don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's only possible because of there is a so depending on what philosophy you subscribe to, I believe Advaita believes that Paramatma and Jivatma are one. Dvaita believes that it's not. So there is a difference, and they can distinguish between the two, and there are qualifications for those. And then Vishishtadvaita thinks that there are specific qualifications upon which they can be equalized.
Right.
So I think it's based on your personal outlook on which philosophy system that you prescribe to?
I don't agree or disagree with any of these, but I would say regardless of which system you subscribe to, there would still be a possibility where the Paramatma can simultaneously appear in multiple forms at one time period. So in the same way, but that's the Paramatma, that's not the Jivatma. The Jivatma cannot necessarily be replicated at one time. Can't be two Daiviks in one time period because there's only one Atma supposed to be present. Or then what would happen? Because there's that concept in certain movies is like, oh, fundamentals of time travel, don't meet yourself or don't touch yourself because you might collapse the whole system. Because if time travel is possible, nothing should happen by contacting yourself physically or just verbally.
Yes.
In a time travel. I don't see why you would like suddenly the world would blow up. Like it makes no sense. It's not like a character your calculator coming up with the error when you do it's like a number divided by 0.
Syntax error.
Like it's not necessarily that case because it's the universe is not some calculator where it would be like, oh, you just touched yourself in a different time period. The world resets or the world blows up. It's not makes sense. Yeah, exactly. There shouldn't be a possibility where that happens in the first place if that's the fundamental law.
If it was possible in nature, then yes, nothing should happen.
I would like to bring a concept of conservation of energy into what David said previously, where the I'll use Mahavishnu in this case, where Vishnu is his own energy and then he descends down. So in that case, like he transfers some of his energy into his avatars, and then so then therefore he is the supreme one. So then what was it?
Does he lose energy?
I mean, conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or like destroyed itself.
But at the same time, the Paramatma is an infinite sort of energy. So it's like from an ocean, if you take a jug at a physical, like a quantifiable level, it's lost water. But it hasn't really lost any
proportionate or like
because it's possibly gained back from some other source.
Exactly.
It probably gained more in that simultaneous period than what it lost. So in the same way, I think like the concept of infinity where it just keeps going endless. So regardless of if you subtract a very large number from an infinity, it's still going to be infinite. In the same way, even if the Paramatma takes like
many
massive portion of its energy into a form in many forms at once, that would not in any way affect his energy or his power where he pervades everywhere, or whatever perception you want to take into that based on your religion or your spiritual outlook.
That's interesting.
But like we've taken time travel into so many different aspects, and I think the really good thing about our podcast is we have such a wide array of perspectives. We have a PhD student, soon to be. we have another possibly soon to be PhD student, all from different lines. So we have a finance guy, we have an intelligence data cybersecurity guy. We have Skanda, the scientist, the proper scientist, traditional scientist. So we have such a wide array of perspectives, and that's what I think makes this conversation very unique. And there's so many avenues that we've taken today. And I don't even know where to head off from here.
That's a cool. I think this has just been an interesting chat. Let's just leave it at this. I mean, I'll open the floor to the audience if they want us to discuss anything that they would like to hear from us. You want to let us know, or what errors have we made, or what did we get wrong? Please also write that in the comments, and we'll respond to it accordingly as well.
Yeah, I think the important part here is like the purpose of this podcast was for three friends to firstly share knowledge to each other. It's a good way of sharing knowledge, good way of just talking about things that usually not a focal points of friendly discussions. And it's a great way to learn for us as well. It's not about that we're perfect, we're intellectuals. We're not some big shots in any form. There's way better people out there. But the point is, it's just for you to learn, for us to learn. It's a collective learning experience.